Adolescents' Perception of Healthy Relationships in Bulgaria, research project supported by Oak Foundation. This project was carried out in 3 phases. Phase 1 being quantitative research, Phase 2 qualitative research, and with Phase 3 serving as a follow-up on the research and discussing the practicality of the discovered data. The entire research was designed and conducted by a group of 40 young peer researchers, aged 12 to 18, boys and girls from Sofia and Aytos. They were empowered, trained and coached by psychologist and psychodrama therapist Kristina Nenova in collaboration with psychoanalyst Maria Chomarova. The project was made possible thanks to the support from 4 local school psychologists and teachers, Association Alternativi Aytos, as well as a team of researchers from the University Institute of Erasmus University Rotterdam and the International Child Development Institute. Research Framework. Since all services, activities and programs of Animus Association Foundation are developed in a psychodynamic framework, psychoanalytic ideas can be found behind the design and the implementation of this research project. Young people are addressed not as an object but as a subject in the process of research. Children are empowered in their role as researchers of their own perceptions. It creates an opportunity not only for strong but also fragile voices to be heard. Some would never share their perspective with adults or young people who are not trained to deal with highly sensitive topics. Children need to know and understand the truth about themselves and their own experiences in the outside world. This need is so fundamental that it is referred to as an epistemophilic instinct or impulse. Klein, 1988. Learning from Experience, Bion, 1962. It is the basic psychodynamic theoretical concept to be used as a foundation to this project. Psychoanalysis, together with other educational theories, define and encourage children's capacity to learn not in the sense of gaining knowledge, but in the sense of enriching and developing their artistic potential. The conventional success of the children in schools can be synchronized with the development of their personality. Nevertheless, these 2 aspects do not overlap. On the contrary, Bion contrasts these 2 concepts. A person can learn about things and a person can learn from experience. There is a big difference in learning by imitation, repeating as a parrot, where the dominating emotion is anxiety, and children desperately try to imitate or resemble something they are not. The Circles of Support approach developed by Erasmus University was also implemented. According to this, young people are positioned in the center of the circle. This approach corresponds with the structure of the psychotherapeutic training. 32 training workshops as well as numerous ongoing regular meetings were conducted in different formats and locations over a period of 4 years. They were designed as a safe space for growth and development. Young peer researchers were invited to think and learn within the context of various activities and psychodrama techniques in order to warm them up for the topic and stimulate ideas from their own experience. The workshops followed the phases of the project. First, the participants formulated their research topics, objectives, and questions. Then, they built upon their experience as researchers. And finally, they had to act as agents of change. Research trainings were provided during the first, more quantitative phase of the project. These trainings shared a common structure, but the exact content was very much related to the specific context within each group setting. One of the main topics focused on the distinction between healthy and unhealthy relationships, based on adolescents' perception and their understanding of the concept of a relationship. Another important topic was dedicated to the purpose of the study, the research objectives, defining areas of interest, formulating research questions, and the target groups. Another part of the training was dedicated to ethical principles and gender issues when doing research. They were also asked to discuss the topic of relationships in the settings in which they were interested in. Every group created their own list of settings, for example, school, family, social media, sexual settings, the friendship setting, and etc. Then they explored the levels of proximity to each of the settings. Young peer researchers were first encouraged to ask as many questions as they could in order to explore the topic in a certain setting. The topic of youth-led research was elaborated in depth and in a comprehensive manner. Young people were able to connect to their personal experiences in research and to everything they already knew about different research methods. The training was designed in such a way so that they would be able to ask research questions and to recognize which of them were more relevant and informative than others. In the end, young people made a list of questions related to each setting they were interested in. After the trainings, 3 different questionnaires were created by the 4 groups of young peer researchers. The 2 groups in Aytos worked together on this. Additional workshops were held in order to support the young peer researchers to improve the draft versions of each questionnaire. After that, all the groups were invited to select the most reliable questions from the 3 sets and to create a common research tool. The young peer researchers piloted the questionnaire. After the pilot phase, they were provided new ideas about the way their research tool could be improved. Reflection workshops were organized for the young peer researchers to share the challenges and positive experiences during the data collection process. For example, most of the young peer researchers from Aytos shared that they found it easier and more enjoyable to collect data than to create the questionnaire. Some of the young peer researchers in Sofia said that it was a challenge to collect data, but in the end they were glad they found so many respondents. In general, most of them found both the development of the questionnaire and the data collection process very interesting and very fun. It was very important to hear their voices and to stimulate them to think about their personal experiences, what was meaningful and useful for them, what they learned during the first phase, and so on. I like the creation of the question sets. They provoke me to think about some of my own negative personality traits. Darina, 16. Notes from the process. All groups of young peer researchers initially missed the topic of the relationships with their teachers as part of the questionnaire. The reason being that these relationships are predefined as ones of power and control, so it was difficult for them to imagine them as any different kind of relationship, and therefore they were not worth exploring. Parent-teacher relationships do not exist in their mind. For most of the young people, the concept of participation meant something very different from what real participation should be. For example, in one of the groups, young people shared that they participated in some projects, but they felt like they could not say no when they were selected by their teachers. In the other group of young people in Sofia, they shared positive experiences in relation to their participation in the student council or other projects they decided to get involved in. These initial workshops were very important in order to understand young people's perception of participation and to become more aware about their motivation to take part in the project. Young people were motivated by different reasons, from being able to talk about relationships to being able to have fun with their peers, all valid motivations, of course. The project team made clear that there was no right or wrong way to join the research. Every participant was supported to participate in a meaningful and enjoyable way. Several workshops were organized in order to prepare the young peer researchers for the second, more qualitative phase of the research project. They were supported in the interpretation of the results after the first project phase. Young peer researchers discussed the results of the survey and provided their interpretations. The groups were facilitated in order to be able to outline the results they found interesting from the research point of view. As a result of this creative process, new research questions were formulated to set the stage for the qualitative project phase, to collect more in-depth information on the most important for them topics: sexual relations, masturbation, friendships, family, school, dominance and violence. Some of the topics were common for young people from Sofia and Aytos, but in each setting they created different sets of questions. Workshops and meetings during the third phase of the project focused on the questions how to use and transmit the skills and knowledge gathered by the researchers. At that third stage, young peer researchers shared their perception of full ownership of the project. They were supported and followed rather than guided. The group had changed. New members, many from the group of respondents, were embraced by the trained and experienced participants. The complicated situation of COVID-19 was addressed and used in a creative and meaningful way. The process and complex feelings on separation and moving on were addressed as well. Notes from the process. Young people were invited to evaluate the level of participation using creative techniques. They were able to share their level of satisfaction in terms of the way they participated in the process. This allowed them to be more sensitive towards their involvement. Measuring the level of participation was meaningful not only to the young peer researchers themselves, but also for the project team. It allowed them to be confident that they were empowering the young peer researchers in taking ownership of the process. Main findings from the research. Results from the first quantitative phase. Characteristics and scope. The demographic associations explored were sex, age, ethnicity, school and city. The research covered geographic, ethnic and social diversity, different age and gender in order to study the impact of different factors on adolescents' perception of healthy relationships. Both young researchers and respondents represent the urban area, capital city of Sofia, and the rural area of South Bulgaria, Aytos. They both were represented by adolescents from different social, ethnic and economic backgrounds from different schools. In the quantitative phase of the research, for which a 50-item questionnaire developed by the young peer researchers was used, a total of 851 young respondents aged 11 to 18 took part. There was an almost even division between boys and girls, and the respondents were from Bulgarian, Roma or Turkish ethnicity. A selection of the most remarkable findings and highlights. In general, young people value trust, respect and support most in their relationships. For both boys and girls, the family and their friends seem to be the most important and closest groups in their lives. They share important things with them. They feel most understood by them. They have the most patience with them, and they share problems in school with them. For the youngest age group, 11 to 12 years old, the relationship with the family seems most important. On the other hand, as children get older, friends seem to gradually become a more important group to share things with. Challenges in love relationships are shared more with friends than with family, especially by girls. Family. A quarter of the respondents do not live with both their parents. The relationship with the mother is often mentioned as the most important. A majority say she is the person closest to them in the family. This is especially the case for girls, young children aged 11 to 12, and Turkish children. Although family relationships are among the most important ones for the respondents, they are not always perceived as positive or satisfactory. 2/3 of the respondents are not fully satisfied with the relationship they share with their family members. They would like their family to understand them better, and they would like to spend more time together or share more with each other. 1 in 5 respondents communicates rarely or never with their parents, and 10% rarely or never feel that their parents respect their opinions. The older the respondents get, the less they feel respected in their opinion. Although the group of Roma respondents was small, it is interesting that a high percentage rarely or never feel their opinion is respected by their parents. Almost half of the respondents state that violence occurs in the family, with 5% saying that it happens always or often. The older the respondents are, the more violence they seem to have experienced or perceived. Most violence happens between parents, but it also occurs between father and mother and child, or among the children. Friendship. Young people value trust, honesty, support, and humour most in relationships with their peers. Hypocrisy, envy, and lack of understanding are considered as the most harmful aspects. Being accepted by their peers also seems important, considering the following findings. 70% have experienced being isolated by their friends. 45% would or might do something that they don't want to do in order to be accepted in a group. Romantic relationships. Only 25% of the respondents report to have a serious romantic relationship, with very low percentages in the younger age groups. 20% have had sex, more boys than girls, and the percentage goes up with age, with 51 of the 17 to 18-year-olds reporting to have had sex. The young age group, aged 11 to 13, do not think it is normal if one partner has power over the other one. The attitude changes at age 14 to 18. 11%, more boys than girls, think it is normal if one partner, the man, has power over the other one, the woman. 24% do not know whether it is or it isn't normal. Homosexuality. Because homosexuality has been a topic of public debate in Bulgaria for the last several years, it was also a popular topic of discussion amongst adolescents who are in the process of defining their own sexualities at this particular life stage. Although there are organizations trying to raise awareness of sexual diversity and human rights in Bulgaria, the issue still provokes very negative social attitudes. In 2018, the Sofia Pride Parade had 3,000 supporters, but protesters threatened physical violence against marchers and hate speech spread on social media. Moreover, Bulgaria failed to ratify the Istanbul Convention on Violence Against Women, mainly because many politicians, journalists and citizens in Bulgaria associate the term gender with homosexuality and transsexuality, believing that the gender education will promote LGBTQ lifestyles to children. The young peer researchers therefore wanted to explore the topic of homosexuality's social acceptability in more depth. They found that 20% of the respondents would hide their homosexuality from their parents, another 20% would be afraid of their answer, only 47% would share it. Only 44% of the respondents would share their homosexuality with their friends. This percentage was particularly low among the Turkish respondents. Physical violence. Violence was an important topic for the young peer researchers, as it reflected in many of the questions as well as in the findings. More than half of the respondents have been a victim of aggression, verbal, physical, or other. It is remarkable that most aggression is experienced in school. Also, 6% experienced aggression at home. When asked about the school setting, a staggering 80% think that violence exists in school. Most violence happens between students, according to 75% of respondents. Almost 7% respond that violence also happened between teachers and principals and students. Sexual violence is said to occur mostly at parties or on the street, but 12% state that it happens at home or at school as well. 58% responded that violence sometimes occurs in romantic relationships between teenagers, mostly psychological violence. 18% have been a victim of cyberbullying. However, 75% have heard about situations of cyberbullying, mostly concerning online threats and offensive messages. Highlight: toilets are the most dangerous place for boys. Home is the most dangerous place for girls. Process note: confidentiality and data protection were guaranteed by using tablets instead of paper to fill and directly send the questionnaire in the common database. Neither the young peer researchers nor supervisors or teachers had access to the individual answers at any time. At the same time, the personal contact between the young peer researchers and their peer respondents were maintained at all times. Overall, Bulgarian adolescents presented a rather positive picture of their relationships with others around them. However, the research also helped pinpoint areas where Bulgarian young people strive for better intergenerational communication, particularly about sexuality and violence. The young peer researchers hope that as we move into advocacy, we can start to address these issues with the broader society in constructive and respectful manners. Results from the second, more qualitative phase. March 2018 to February 2019. Family. During the first project phase, the young peer researchers found that young people are very close to their mothers in comparison to other family members. They decided to explore this finding in detail and to find out the qualities a mother should possess in order to maintain a healthy relationship with her child. Young peer researchers found out that one of the most important qualities a mother could have is the ability to understand her child. Young people also responded that a mother should be able to listen to her child. Young peer researchers interpreted these results as something they believed will support their relationship with the members of the family. Another interesting result was related to young people's understanding that a mother should be strict and tolerant at the same time in order to maintain a healthy relationship with her child. The results showed that young people are satisfied by the relationships with their parents because parents are able to provide meaningful support. In addition, respondents stated that support is another important element of a healthy relationship. Although young peer researchers themselves evaluate the result as positive, they commented that the quantitative phase also indicated that there are a lot of people who are not so satisfied with the topics they were able to discuss with their parents. For example, the respondents said that the most popular topic they discuss with their parents are related to everyday activities, plans, school, work, problems they faced, etc. One of the results showed that for many of the respondents there are other topics they would like to be able to address in the relationship with their family, to be able to share their feelings, to know more about their parents' lives, to be able to talk about bullying at school, discuss topics such as sex. Young peer researchers were able to provide their interpretations of these results during workshops. They said that there were many parents who were unable to talk about young people's emotions, their relationship with friends or intimate partners. According to the young peer researchers, this was one of the reasons why some of their friends were not able to communicate such topics with their parents. Some of the young peer researchers shared that their parents are often too focused on their grades. They added that they would be happier if their parents would listen more to them about other things too. Sexual relations. Most of the young peer researchers were interested to work on the topic of sexual relations, porn and masturbation. They formed new questions in order to understand more about the way young people perceive sexuality. Another main question of interest concerned the role of the school setting and its influence on young people's sexual and romantic relationships. Young peer researchers decided to explore the role of sex in romantic and intimate relationships. It is very clear from the findings that young people do not learn anything about sex in their school setting. Young peer researchers said that they were not surprised by such a result, but they still found it very problematic. Many of the young researchers talked about the way their sexual education was provided, and most of them were convinced that they did not have any sexual education at all. In most of the cases, we are educating the boy when it comes to sexual education. Ivanka, 17. Young peer researchers commented that the school does not provide any space for learning or exchange when it comes to such a topic. They shared that if teachers were willing to talk about it at all, they really only talk about the ways young people can protect themselves from sexual diseases and pregnancy. Actually, I read a lot of articles about sex. I took part in a course dedicated to sexual education. I do not learn anything in my school. I learned a lot from the girls from this group. Alexander, 17. According to the findings, sex is seen as essential in order to keep a relationship healthy. Young peer researchers explained that there is a need for a program focused on sexual relations. They believe that such a program could provide space for young people to talk about other aspects of sexuality and intimacy. They pointed at some of the things that came up in the quantitative phase: love and romance, exploring young people's understanding of sex, the role of sex in a healthy relationship, sexual experience as a pleasant one, and so on. According to the young people, there is a huge discrepancy between the goal of sexual education at school aiming to concern and frighten young people and their need to discuss sex as positive and healthy. According to them, sex brings partners closer to each other, reduces stress in the relationship, strengthens the relationship between the partners, makes the couple's relationships more serious, brings happiness, leads to the couple's stability, brings confidence to the partners. The funniest moment for me was when we interpreted the results. I have realized that some people think that the concept of health could be related only to their physical health. Maria, 17. Another interesting finding was related to young people's perception of the role of porn and masturbation in healthy relationships. One of the main results indicated that even when young people identified that porn videos could distort their perception about sex, they also believed that it could provide a positive experience. For example, respondents said that they could gain some knowledge from watching porn. Another main finding here is the respondents' belief that it is healthy to watch porn from the age of 15 or 16. However, they acknowledge the fact that it could also lead to unrealistic expectations towards intimate partners. I was shocked about the ideas some people had in relation to sexuality. A boy believed that it is not healthy to masturbate. I think it is very bad that we do not have sexual education at school. I think that we should have such a program at least for a school year. Eva, 16. School. During the qualitative survey, 90% of the respondents said that school bullying exists in their schools. One of the groups from Aytos decided to further explore the reasons behind this and young people's understanding of coping strategies in dealing with bullying. Young peer researchers explored the reasons which lead to bullying in school. The respondents believe that bullying is based on young people's desire to compete with each other, mainly when it comes to intimate relations. According to the respondents, there are also other reasons which could lead to violence at school. For example, the family model, the inability of young people to cope with conflicts, hate speech, the inability to communicate with peers, and many more. According to the respondents, students should spend more time communicating with each other in order to prevent bullying. Another interesting finding here is that they say that students should learn how to control their negative feelings in order to be able to think before they act in different situations. Respondents also said that parents should play a role in coping with school bullying. They believe that parents should pay more attention to their children, and this could influence the way that children behave in conflict situations. Most of the respondents believe that they are responsible for the way they communicate with others and that they are the people who have the power to do it in a healthy way. They also added that teachers and their ability to communicate with the students could influence young people's attitude towards their classmates. Dominance. Another interesting topic the YIPs decided to explore further was related to the concept of dominance in an intimate relationship. They also explored the concept of equality and the way it is connected to healthy relationships. I know many cases when the boy dominates over the girl in their intimate relationship. Elitsa, 16. Respondents' answers indicate that the concept of dominance is something they are aware of. Young people provided many ideas about the way a person or an intimate partner could cope with such a problem. For example, most of the respondents said that better communication between intimate partners could help them make a change. They also said that respecting each other's opinions and making compromises in their relationship could solve the problem. Although the respondents provided various ideas about the way young people could cope with dominance, most of them also said that intimate partners should separate if they are involved in such a relationship. But I know that there are also many cases when the girl is in the powerful position towards the boy. Monica, 17. Young peer researchers try to unpack the concept of equality and to explore whether it's present or not in the young people's intimate relations. The findings showed that for most of the respondents, to be equal in an intimate or romantic relationship means that partners are understanding of each other and they are making decisions together. It is interesting to note that most of the respondents said they knew young people who maintain equality in relationships with their intimate partners. On the other hand, there are still many of them who said they have not encountered such a type of relationship yet. Young peer researchers researched what trust and respect mean to young people. Although young people shared that respect is one of the qualities they appreciated the most when it comes to friendships, the quantitative phase showed that many of the respondents do not feel respected by their friends. In addition, many of the young people indicated that they do not share personal topics, for example, family issues, past relationships and feelings, with their friends. Young peer researchers discussed whether this could be explained by the lack of respect in a friendship. The researchers suggested that creating a space for young people to discuss the concept of respect and trust in a friendship could empower them not only to think about the way they relate to others, but also to invent how to make their friendships healthier. The transformative impacts of youth participatory research. The young peer researchers changed and grew during the process through active participation. The participants learned how to cooperate better. In the beginning, it was a challenge for many of the young peer researchers to listen to each other and respect other people's views. Some of them were friends and were initially not ready to cooperate with other people from the group, but during the process they learned how to convey opinions in a more empathetic way, also allowing others to convince them. We also observed differences in the way boys and girls interacted with each other. In one group in Sofia, for example, there was only one boy in the team. The girls learned how to create space for him to speak out and learn to listen to him and his perspectives. In another group, it was a challenge for them to formulate questions, but boys and girls who might have been discouraged from interaction in the broader society were tasked together with working to come up with quality question sets. We observed gradual changes in the ways they related to each other, with less hesitance and greater respect. In this way, we can say that youth participatory research can already start to transform gender attitudes amongst adolescents through cooperation to reach a certain goal. Additionally, it could be a challenge for the project team to encourage young peer researchers and keep them motivated, but in the process, the young peer researchers learned how to support each other. Many of them initially had low self-esteem. During the process, it could be seen how their self-confidence increased because they were supported by their peers and the circles of support team to develop skills and share opinions. Many young peer researchers felt unsure at first, but after the first project phase, they were very proud of themselves because they had collected the data faster than had been expected. The young peer researchers also learned how to cope with negative reactions of respondents, how to deal with that in a positive manner, which would help them in other situations as well. The supervisors also learned a lot about research and youth participation from this project. More importantly, the supervisors changed the way they perceived young people and their ability to do research. In many cases, it was more challenging for them to convince adults that the young people are able to create research tools and collect data. Because of such beliefs, some of the supervisors found it challenging to create a space for active participation, but they were supported with regular meetings and remote contact. The supervisors were also encouraged to participate and give input. They eventually felt more confident to share opinions during the workshops or even to facilitate warm-up activities with the young peer researchers. They were also able to recognize the changes in the young peer researchers and their behavior. The project encouraged them to lobby the school management for follow-up activities to help disseminate the study results at the school level. Impact of the process on the researchers from Animus. Researchers from Animus also grew and changed during this journey. Animus, as an organization working with children and youth, tried to always be a voice, encouraging their participation on topics which they found important and meaningful. The project also allowed them to hear so much more diverse adolescent voices and to gather ample data about young people's understanding of healthy relationships in various settings. They challenged themselves to constantly analyze the process and to use individualized approaches in order to maintain young people's curiosity and motivation. The techniques and methods they used with the young peer researchers were based on the input young people made during the meetings. Many of the data collection exercises were also co-designed or revised by young people during the research workshops. Follow-up from the research. There are interesting conclusions drawn from the findings which were used for the next phase of the project, using the knowledge and experience for advocacy activity aiming change and improvement. Sexual education. Young people were advocates for more comprehensive sexual education in the school setting to be done in schools, but also, for example, towards relevant local and national authorities. Violence at school. Young people are fighting to find new ways of addressing violence, enhancing the communication between peers on topics such as hate speech, cyberbullying, coping with negative feelings, anger, envy, sadness, and conflict situations in order to stimulate conflict resolution and prevent acting out. Promoting equality and equity. They advocate for equality in intimate relationships and other relationships. Participation. They advocate for more space for young people in schools and other settings to develop and express their opinions and influence decision making. What happened next? Small follow-up on the research exploring intimate relationships during the COVID crisis, presenting the findings to other students, teachers, parents, and other stakeholders. 7 videos were filmed to raise awareness. The findings were written about, for example, in articles or blogs. Discussions on the topics were held among peers. The results of the research exploring intimate relationships during COVID pointed out the increase of aggressive, provocative, and sexualized communication among the age group 12 to 16. Youngsters explored important issues during the workshops like power dynamics and social gender roles. Who pays the bill in the restaurant? Or how does one balance between romantic relationships and other friendships? Despite the thorough communication and research, some questions were left unanswered. After COVID-19, the world will never be the same. How about relationships? The family setting, friendships, violence? How about school and social media? So in the end, what are healthy relationships? They are give and take.